Yeah, so I guess we can just kind of start out with, I mean, simple question, but also big question. Like, how did you
Hmm.
first come to know Christ? Like,
Yeah,
yeah, I mean,
yeah. Uh, yeah, I came to know Christ when I was very little. I've always went to church. It was kind of like a routine thing, really. You know how it is with kids, like it's routine just to go and, go to Bible study and go to, you know, um, Bible study before church even starts. So you got, all that. And then it really changed for me more in high school and then in college, because that's when your faith really starts to grow and get tested, and you really start to grow in your faith then. For me, um, I got saved. I dedicated my life to Christ when I was a sophomore, and then I rededicated myself when I was a sophomore again in college. So I was like, look, before I was like, yeah, I should do it, and then um, I finally got the fully understanding of what it meant to be baptized and to rededicate myself and realign myself with the Word, and so that's what I did. I did it again, and obviously I had reservations at first, but I think I had a really good friend at Penn State. And he got baptized like 3 or 4 times, but he's just said, I just think this is, good for me, not because I'm just getting baptized just because of whatever, but he said it was just something that I needed for myself, and yeah, so really did. I think, you know, very young is when I was introduced to Christ, but really coming to my faith and relationship with Him was in college and high school.
yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I'm the same way, really.
Yeah.
It really became my own. Like here, I'm a senior at UF in Gainesville, so I really faith became my own in college. I feel like
Right.
it happens with a lot. So I wanted to talk about your relationship with God and how it's progressed, like being in a college locker room and an NFL locker room where you do have some believers, but you also have differing opinions,
Right.
different faith systems, non-believers. So what is that like, and how has it been integrating your faith into a locker room like that?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, my faith is still growing. I mean, it's never stopping. You're always growing, you're always learning. And so you're always dealt with different challenges in terms of your faith. So in college it wasn't as bad because there's a lot of people who are you hung around people who are like-minded as yourself. And so, if someone was opposite, not more so opposite, but didn't believe the same beliefs as you, it was 108 people on the team. So it was more than not Christians than who weren't. Or if they weren't, they didn't really, they weren't loud about it as, some guys who are in the locker room are, or people who are on opposing locker rooms are. It's just a lot different in an NFL atmosphere than a college atmosphere.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of different beliefs. There's a lot of, new, not new things, but things that start to resurface now that happened long before we were even born. And so, the biggest thing for me is just having grace and having discernment and how I approach those conversations, bring up Christ, um, have intellectual, deep, intimate conversations with guys, trying to lead them to Christ, but not be pushy, but also having a a value, like sort of a scale between truth and love. And so, just trying to not be pushy, but also trying to tell them the truth and have love behind it. So it's very different from a college atmosphere and NFL atmosphere because there's a lot of strong opinions.
Yeah, absolutely. And then in an NFL locker room, have there been players like in the Saints locker room, for instance, that you've kind of looked up to as, I don't want to say like spiritual guides, but like mentors in
Mm-hmm.
that sense?
Yeah, yeah. Um, I think Demario was one of those guys who a lot of guys look up to. Just because one, he's an older guy, but also he lives out the word, and it says don't only be hearers of the words, be doers of the word. And I feel like he has a great exemplification of that. Him loving his wife, him loving his kids, him loving the sport, but him not um, him not having so much of a physical um, drain in the sport, but also having a spiritual, engulfment in the sport, and in the word, and all of that coming into one. And so I feel like he's like a great guy, to look up to, especially in the locker room, because he's always dealt with a lot of things, and him talking about Christ even on the field is and the biggest thing. And I remember reading a sports spectrum on him, about him wearing fear God, or something like that on his headband, which was very inspirational because I heard about that even before I even entered the league. So, just him, still having faith and, fighting that and knowing that he wanted to represent Christ, and him about to get fined for it, was kind of the craziest thing.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned Sports Spectrum. It's funny. I've been listening to a lot of those podcasts
Yeah.
recently because, like, when I decided to like do this project, I was like, I wonder if
Yeah.
this has been done. Like, I knew in some capacity it had.
Hmm.
I listened to a lot of Jason Romano and that podcast, trying
Love
to
that.
pick up like
Yeah. Yeah.
tips and stuff like that from them.
Absolutely. They're great. They're
They're
great,
awesome.
man.
I've really
They're great.
enjoyed listening like old episodes and stuff like that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Looking at your journey as a player, obviously you transfer in college, you go as an undrafted free agent. Were there times like during the draft process going undrafted where I don't want to say there were like doubts in your faith or anything like that, but anything like sort of like that during like was it hard to remain steady in your faith, and what do you think you learned in that like in that
Yeah.
time?
Yeah. It was definitely tough. Um, But what I've learned recently, looking back, because I always look back and see how, oh, this could have been this way, this could have been that way. But God definitely aligns things for a reason, for things to happen, for Him to get the glory. And so I don't know how things would have happened if everything would have went my way. Strength is tested um, when you go through circumstances, when you go through trials. And I feel like that was the biggest thing for me. That's the reason why I'm here. Um, there's meaning. There's meaning in the mess. That's kind of like a little motto. Like there was meaning in the mess, and so I couldn't see it then, but I see it now. Why I went through, not getting drafted, and going through the combine, going through all that, and working out late at night, and not seeing the results initially. Saying like, dang, I went through all this, and I'm not seeing anything. But even now, like, yes, he's blessed me so much, but the blessing isn't just because I'm being successful. The blessing is that he's getting glory because of it. And so it's just more of me knowing that this isn't it. Like this, me doing well is just because, of my sport or anything like that. There's always good on the other side of obedience. So just just keeping going. Just knowing that this ain't the end. Like me just doing well, just that isn't it. He wants more for me. And so just being obedient, being steadfast in that.
Yeah, there's meaning in the mess. I love that. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Um, so kind of off the field, you and your wife are now pregnant with a baby girl,
Yeah.
5 6 months pregnant now,
5 months. Yeah.
5 months now.
Yeah.
Um, and obviously it was a long journey to get to that point. Um, what do you think you learned kind of off the field in kind of the last 12, 18 months? Um,
Yeah.
like during that kind of dark period.
Yeah. Uh, I would say, man, I mean, I've learned so much in that period, but I've learned that there is power in prayer. Um, I feel like, well, I just went to a conference and, it talking about prayer and the power of it, but truly praying, like, I know, like, we just say, like, the old prayer and it's all good and whatever, but I think, like, having an intimate, conversation with God, was the biggest thing. It didn't have to be long. It just, he knew what I had and I brought it to him. And I feel like it was like, me bringing all I had to him and knowing that, look, I don't know what you want me to do. Like I don't even know what, why we're going through it. I don't know why, this keeps happening. But it's sort of like it went back to how me starting this whole NFL journey is like there's something that's coming out of this and we couldn't see it, but we didn't know how it was going to unfold, but we know something good was going to come out of it because it was a storm. And so, I always say that you either go into a storm, you're coming out of one, or you're in one. It's always the storm is always around the corner. And so we were just in that storm for so long. I was just wondering when, you know, he was guiding us through it, but I was trying to see, all right, God, like we trying to get out. Like what's the deal? What's happening? And so us getting out of it and us praying, it really helped us out. And yeah, and we finally had that baby girl, and just praying so hard, and having so many conversations. It really shows the power of prayer and the power of God that He can do things when we bring everything we have to Him.
That's awesome. And then the moment that Shannon tells you, because I was watching the YouTube video and all of that,
Hmm.
during the season, she tells you that she's pregnant. What was just your reaction to that after everything had happened?
Well, I mean, at first, I mean, I believed her, of course, but it almost seems surreal. It's like, are you serious? Are you sure? We also had yeah, we had so many reservations, like, 'cause we're just like we don't know, like, is this are we going to be good this time? But we are. It's kind of like us limiting our God because of our issue, limiting our God because of our problem. And so He is so much bigger and so much stronger than you know the miscarriages and the problems that we have and the difficulties that we have. Like we can't limit our faith because of our problems. And so once we stopped doing that, the trials became easier. It's like us having like luggage and God putting wheels on it because we're not carrying those things alone. And so, like He gives us things to carry, but He helps us because He puts wheels on them. And so it makes it easier for Him to it makes it easier for us to deal with the problems.
Yeah, absolutely. I just have a few more questions. Really appreciate you taking a few
Yeah, yeah.
minutes. So I originally thought about reaching out to Davis to interview you because you showed up on my For You page on Instagram Reels with Underdog Athletics.
Oh
Um,
man.
so I
Yep.
wanted to ask about that and why it's important for you to like partner with Christian brands like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Definitely. And I just felt it was so good. I just felt like it was right. Um, Obviously, I mean, there's going to be a ton of Christian brands, and sometimes they don't always have direction. I mean, and sometimes, you know people by their fruits and know if like they're doing it for the right things, if they're doing it for money or just whatever the case is. But something was different about Underdog, and going into it, I was like, man, like these people are really, really about the Word of God, and if it's profitable and if it's successful, then it's whatever. Like that's not our job, and so it just also being an athletic brand was a plus because it's like, all right, you're a Christian brand, we also have athletic brand too, and so us collabing on Make Disciples was the biggest thing because that's what we're called to do, to make disciples. We're called to go out into the world and teach the word of God. And so whether people accept it or not, I mean that's up to them. But at the end of the day, God will meet people where they're at. And the biggest thing for me and Underdog Athletics was knowing that it's not about us. It's about furthering the kingdom, and it's about reaching people. And that's what really got me connected with them and got me with Brandon. And it was great, man. And it was a great time. It was really inspiring for me, but I'm sure it was inspiring to a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. And then my last question is, as you kind of look forward, look at like where you've been, where you are now, as you're looking forward, obviously we all have room to grow. Where do you
Yeah.
think the Lord is growing in you, and where do you think He's calling you over these next few years?
Yeah. Um, well, me and my wife have just been, learning more about, just our ministry, and our ministry is our marriage. And so showing that our ministry is marriage and knowing that there's meaning in all of it and that there's purpose in all of it. And so the more I dive into the word, the more I love Christ. And that just falls into alignment with me loving my wife more and my soon to be daughter. And so when I get attached from that word, because he's like the power plug, if I get attached from that word, then I'm not doing what I'm, like organized to do, that I'm like wired to do. Like that love is from him. and I'm spreading love to my wife and even other people. And so I have to always be attached in that word because that's going to give me power, you know? So yeah,
Yeah, that's awesome. Those are all the questions I had. Thank you so much again for
absolutely,
taking
man.
some time to talk to me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Love what you're doing, man.
Thank you. It means a lot.